that I would be back at the AGM. And I may say, Gary, you seem to have read my speech. A lot of the things you touched on are here, written down, documented, so forgive me for that. So good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank Yasmin and the board for inviting me back and allowing me to come back to speak at this event. But before I begin my homily, can I just say that if any of you are thinking about retirement, not the board, but anyone else, I can totally recommend it. It brings with it full nights of sleeping, and it also doesn't have the imposter syndrome. When you retire, you know you've deserved it, and you know you're doing a good job at walking and gardening and cooking and enjoying life with your husband. So if you're thinking about it, plan for it. So, to begin my speech, I must admit, and John will probably recollect some of these times, that as an employee of Parkinson's WA for over 25 years, I at times faced AGMs with a sense of anxiety because we never really knew what was going to happen on the floor, and AGMs can be a little bit like that. Today, however, this brings a sense of joy and pride at what this organisation has achieved, not just in the 25 years that I was employed, but definitely in the few years before I started, so prior to 1999, when the very small committee was planning for a nurse specialist role. But more particularly, what has happened since May, since I've retired and left. The organisation is moving forward. Yasmin has suggested, and did suggest, that as a topic I should reflect on my role of 25 years with PWA. And while I took her suggestion on board, I really felt that at the 25th anniversary and here at my retirement function, I did a lot of reflecting. So I've taken her suggestion and added a twist to it, so forgive me, because I'm not an employee anymore and I don't always have to do what I'm told. So it's a reflection with a twist. Today, I'd like to take you through a journey of breakthroughs and blockages related mainly to two aspects of care of people with Parkinson's. And we're going to start with pharmacy and personalities. Let's address pharmacy first. Over my years with PWA, I was often confronted by frustrated members of our community who are impatiently and hopefully waiting for a breakthrough in medication. This often occurred in this room, usually at our newly diagnosed seminars. And while I totally understood the sentiments expressed, when I reflect, I think, I hope I didn't appear too defensive of the scientists and of pharmacy when I was giving my response. I agree. It is strange and ironic that in 2024 we still regard levodopa as the gold standard treatment, even though it was first trialled in 1961 and first prescribed during my first year of training, 1967. It took great professional bravery for the medicos in Vienna to experiment with 20 patients, and even more bravery to film it. That wouldn't happen today. Professor Olli Hornikowitz and his colleague Walter Berkmeyer were key players in the identification and the possible usefulness of levodopa in Parkinson's. When Professor Hornikowitz, and that's a challenge to say that, passed away in 2020, I was so moved because I've always been a fan of his, and he was 93 when he passed away. I posted on Parkinson's WA Facebook a tribute to him. And I will admit to be moved to tears when the next day his son, who I'm sure was not a young chap, got in touch and thanked me for my kind words about his father. If levodopa was to be developed today, it probably wouldn't pass the rigorous testing and the evaluation that all medications must go through. It's because of the bravery and the passion of personalities such as Professor Hornikowitz that mobility and quality of life for our community has improved and has been transformed. So we must remember that pharmacy doesn't happen without personalities. Fast forward to 1998, and the Australian Parkinson's community was anxiously awaiting the release and the PBS listing of a breakthrough medication, Tasmar. This was the first COMT inhibitor and is an ancestor of Stalevo and Comtan. It was even suggested by the pharmaceutical company, whose name I can't remember. I'm glad to say I can't remember the pharmaceutical companies. It was even suggested by the company producing it that it would stop people going into aged care facilities. On November the 24th, 1998, my first day in the role of Parkinson's nurse specialist, I received a telephone call from our resident PWA internet sleuth, and there was internet in 1998, and that was Dennis Green. And he informed me that Tasmar had been withdrawn in America, Canada, and Europe, and was not going to be PBS listed in Australia. And this was due to life-threatening effects, adverse events. So we in Australia dodged a bullet at that time. I felt then, in my first day, first job, first Parkinson's nurse specialist, it was my responsibility to inform the major players in Parkinson's WA medical world. And I really only knew one. So I rang Dr. Barry Vieira at Osborne Park and said, guess what? Tasmar's been pulled from under our feet. I'll always associate that pharmaceutical blockage with those two personalities. Several years later, another pharmaceutical breakthrough was the release of the first ever once-a-day Parkinson medication, Cabezer. In spite of it being neatly packaged, it soon became clear, well, as soon as the drug rep handed me the bottle, that our Parkinson's community couldn't open the container. And therefore, they had to go back to the drawing board and design a specially designed lid opener. First problem, first blockage. And after a few years, we discovered that there were potential cardiac-related problems, and Cabezer was eventually cast aside. We may not discover the newest pharmaceutical breakthroughs here in Perth. I hate to admit it, but we are limited by our size and potentially our isolation. But we can be part of the wider research into innovative treatments and breakthroughs. And the passion for that is led, as Gary has hinted, by our research arm of PWA. Rigorous evaluation of proposals is carried out before projects are approved, advertised, or funded. And it's a credit to everyone on the research committee that this passion is maintained in the face of that rigorous evaluation. Can I encourage those of you who are members here today to become involved with research at any level? I myself have often acted as a control subject or someone with a family history of Parkinson's. Research and breakthroughs can't happen without personalities. In addition to pharmaceutical developments, I have seen one aspect of advanced therapies develop from relatively basic, if there is such a beast, relatively basic brain surgery, pallidotomy and thalamotomy, both discovered almost by serendipity and performed with the patient awake and talking, because that was the only way the neurosurgeon knew where he was in the brain. And he also needed to see the manifestation of the motor symptoms. I remember vividly being present at one such surgery here in Perth, talking to my lovely patient during her hours-long procedure. With the passion and skills of our neurosurgeons, neurologists, and surgical teams, we now have 3 centres in Perth which carry out much more refined surgical procedures known as deep brain stimulation. And mapping of the brain and the target sites, it's a refined art, enhanced by high technology. Now patients who have this procedure can even be monitored and have their devices programmed remotely. Perth to the Pilbara is one example. Parkinson's WA must be acknowledged as the major force in the nurturing of personalities with passion and purpose for Parkinson's here in Perth and throughout our state. I can never cease being amazed and proud of the small committee led by John and Robin Lahore, Bob and Joy Graham, and John and Anne MacDonald, who in 1997 lobbied the WA government for funding for a trial of a Parkinson's nurse specialist. Their enthusiasm and persistence raised the profile of Parkinson's with our state government and resulted in a funding arrangement which now spans 26 years. A collaboration which is the envy of many other states in Australia. This collaboration has been proven and documented and demonstrated, and the nurse is coming out on me with those words, but it has been proven and demonstrated not just by funding, but also by the presence of our current Premier, Roger Cook, at the 20th anniversary of the PNS, and the current Minister for Health, Amber Jade Sanderson, at our 25th celebration. And I can tell you, they had fun. They enjoyed it. They reinforced our belief in what we do. The rest of the Parkinson's nurse role is history, but I firmly believe that it was, and still is, the passion of all the nurses who have worked and still work in this role, which has encouraged health professionals in other settings to develop passion and purpose, which has led to the formation of Parkinson's clinics throughout the metropolitan area and the southwest. Generations of baby doctors have progressed through those clinics and perfected their pharmacy skills in prescribing Parkinson's medication. I will always remember a young medical student's comment to me, "You know, Janet, treating Parkinson's is more of an art than a science. I firmly believe you can only refine your art through exposure to your subject, and that has happened due to the energy and passion coming through all levels of PWA. I'm very encouraged to see the recent collaboration between Parkinson's WA and the personalities with expertise in palliative care. Palliative care is a topic which may cause anxiety among some, but in reality, it is a topic we all should consider and anticipate needing, regardless of whatever diagnosis we face. Bringing together the passions of a palliative care team with our expertise in Parkinson's will only result in a better end-of-life journey for all who require those services. To come towards a conclusion, I've reflected that in all aspects of life, personalities, people, and passion influences and trumps, excuse me saying that word, but trumps all other considerations. It has been the personalities from Dr. James Parkinson to your present neurologist, whoever he or she may be, and your nurses and your healthcare team. They have supported you and maintained you to where you are now on your health journey. It should also be remembered that most health professionals and people who specialise in the Parkinson's field, in no matter what role, have been influenced in some way by usually a family member, a colleague, a friend with the condition. As I sat down to develop this talk and reflect on my time with Parkinson's WA, I remembered, and it became very clear, that when I started in 1998, I was the only paid employee. And most all of the drive and energy came from the volunteers who ran the organisation. The early committee, which I mentioned previously, was a prime example of people with Parkinson's acting as educators and advocates. They had to take on those roles because they had no dedicated health professional apart from their neurologist. They started a fire which resulted in the organisation we celebrate today. It's essential that the work, energy, and passion is not just confined to the organisation, because I know all workers and employees can become weary, may become weary, and work-life balance is important. I've had the privilege to work with the Parkinson's community for over 25 years, and I can honestly say that the most outstanding personalities I have met during that time were the people with Parkinson's. So my belief is that each of you affected by Parkinson's, whether as a person with the condition, or a partner, or a relative, has a responsibility to nurture passion in the personalities you deal with, and to lobby and advocate for best practice to be maintained and improved upon. Becoming involved with Parkinson's WA and supporting the health professionals who are working hard to maintain the gold standard management we have here in WA is, in some way, your challenge. I wish you success in that. Thank you. My husband thought there might be questions, but I don't think so.
Thank you, Janet. Was there any questions for Janet, maybe?
No. Enough
All
said.
right.
Thank you.
We've got a little gift for you. Just a tiny one, just to say thank you. And look, we will reiterate that we have had, not many organisations